Win this, and I'll give you $100 million, Billionaire laughed. Maid's daughter did. His face went pale. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's incredible story. In a high-rise building overlooking the city, a lavish, glass-walled conference room buzzed with the quiet hum of high-stakes business. The kind of place where billionaires and CEOs made life-changing decisions, where fortunes were made and lost in the blink of an eye. Harrison Thorne, a self-made billionaire with a reputation for being both ruthless and brilliant, sat at the head of a long, sleek conference table, surrounded by his top engineers and advisors. His eyes narrowed as he stared at the display in front of him, but it wasn't the numbers or the figures that frustrated him. It was the machine in the center of the room, the Prometheus engine. Designed to revolutionize energy production, this machine had the potential to change the world, yet it had been failing for weeks, unable to run for more than 90 seconds without crashing. The engineers, the so-called experts in their field, had been working tirelessly, but they were stumped. And Harrison was growing impatient. This is unbelievable, he muttered to himself, standing up abruptly. The machine that should have been the jewel of his empire was nothing but a failure. The tension in the room was palpable, the kind of silence that only came in moments of impending disaster. The engineers shifted uncomfortably in their seats, avoiding Harrison's glare. They knew what was coming. What do you all have to say for yourselves? Harrison's voice was low, a warning that was more dangerous than any shout. No one dared to speak, knowing that any wrong word could cost them their jobs, their careers, their lives. And then, in the corner of the room, Amelia Hayes, a quiet and unassuming woman who had worked as a cleaner at Thorne Industries for years, was tidying up the last of the coffee cups. She had been there for hours. Unnoticed, invisible as always. She had seen the rise of the empire from the edges, always out of place in the grand halls of power. But today, something was different. Harrison, growing more frustrated by the minute, turned to her with a smirk. He'd had enough. He needed a scapegoat, someone to take the blame for his failure. You there, he said, pointing at Amelia with a cold, mocking smile. Do you think you could fix this? Fix the Prometheus engine, and I'll give you $100 million. Do you think you could do it? His words hung in the air like a dare. The room fell silent. His engineers watched with bated breath. Everyone knew he was mocking her, belittling her in front of the whole room. But they all waited. They waited for her to shrink back, to apologize, to act the way they all expected. But Amelia didn't flinch. Instead, she took a deep breath, her fingers trembling slightly as she set down the last of the cups. She had never been one for confrontation, but something about this moment ignited a spark within her. She looked up, her eyes meeting Harrison's. I can, she said softly, but with surprising confidence. The room went still. Harrison's smirk faltered, a flicker of doubt crossing his face. The engineers exchanged glances, uncertain of how to react. They had never expected a woman like Amelia to speak up, let alone challenge them. But before anyone could say a word, she walked towards the machine, her movements calm and deliberate. The billionaire and his engineers stood frozen, watching her every move. What could this cleaning lady possibly know about engineering? What could she do that they hadn't already tried? The tension in the room was thick, and for a moment, time seemed to stretch. Then, with a steady hand, Amelia began to dismantle the control panel, her fingers moving expertly over the wires, the circuits, the complex mechanisms that had stumped some of the greatest minds in the world. And as the seconds ticked by, Harrison's face went pale. He was about to witness something he never saw coming. Amelia's hands worked with a steady precision that left everyone in the room speechless. As she carefully dismantled the control panel of the Prometheus engine, Harrison's initial shock turned to confusion. His eyes widened in disbelief as he watched the cleaning. Lady, someone who had spent years cleaning the floors of this empire, navigate the machine with the ease of a seasoned engineer. She wasn't rushing, but her movements were deliberate, as if she had seen this before, as if she understood it on a level that no one else in the room did. The engineers exchanged nervous glances, their minds racing. Had they missed something so simple, something they'd overlooked? Amelia's fingers moved with a calm assurance, adjusting wires and pressing buttons, as the entire room waited for something to happen. She stopped for a moment, her gaze fixed on the panel, before pressing a final button. The machine, which had been silent and unyielding for weeks, suddenly came to life. A low hum filled the room as the Prometheus engine sprang into action, its complex systems lighting up and working seamlessly. The engineers stared at the screens in disbelief. It was working. It was actually working. The machine they had all failed to fix, the machine that had baffled the brightest minds in the room, was now functioning perfectly. Harrison Thorne's jaw dropped as he stared at the machine, then back at Amelia. He couldn't believe it. He had humiliated her just moments before, mocking her, daring her to solve a problem that had stumped the world's top engineers. Now, he stood frozen, unable to find the words. Amelia stood there, calm and collected, as if she hadn't just turned the impossible into reality. She had solved the problem that no one else could. The tension in the room was thick, the once silent machine now humming steadily, its lights glowing like a beacon of triumph. The engineers, still in shock, slowly began to gather their thoughts, realizing what had just happened. The room was filled with an uncomfortable silence as Harrison finally found his voice. "How did you do it?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Amelia, without missing a beat, looked him in the eye and said, "It was the wiring. It wasn't connected properly. It was a small error that you all missed." The simplicity of her explanation hit harder than any complex formula or high-level engineering jargon. The billion-dollar project had been brought to its knees by something so small, something that no one had bothered to check. Harrison's face went pale as the weight of his arrogance crushed him. He had underestimated her, dismissed her, as just another cleaner, someone invisible in the grand scheme of things. But now, she had not only saved the project, she had exposed his failure. The room was eerily quiet. The engineers were still trying to process what had just happened. And Harrison? He could only stare at Amelia, his mind reeling. He had mocked her in front of his team, thinking she was incapable of understanding anything about technology, much less fixing one of the most important inventions of the century. But now, the reality was undeniable. Amelia had done the impossible. She had proven that talent and intelligence didn't come with a title or a suit. It came from within, from a quiet confidence and an understanding that couldn't be measured by wealth or status. Harrison took a slow, shaky breath, his eyes never leaving her. He realized, in that moment, how wrong he had been. The cold, harsh walls of his empire suddenly felt smaller, more fragile. He had just witnessed a moment of pure genius, and it came from someone who had spent years cleaning up after him. The irony of it hit him harder than the success of the engine itself. In the world of power and wealth, he had been blinded by his own arrogance. And now, a cleaner had shown him what true brilliance looked like. As the room slowly returned to a quiet hum, Harrison stood motionless, still processing the events that had unfolded before him. Amelia's calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the chaos she had just created. She had, without a doubt, done the impossible. The Prometheus engine, a project years in the making, now hummed to life as a result of her intervention. Harrison's thoughts spun, overwhelmed by the complexity of the situation. He had underestimated her, treating her as invisible for years, yet she had just saved his empire from the brink of failure. The realization hit him harder than any loss of money ever could. He could hear the murmurs of the engineers as they discussed the details of the solution she had provided, their voices filled with a mixture of awe and disbelief. It was clear to everyone in the room. Amelia had proven herself to be far more than just a cleaner. She was a genius in her own right. Harrison's gaze shifted back to Amelia, who remained standing by the control panel, her expression calm but her eyes revealing a quiet strength that was impossible to ignore. The weight of the moment settled on him like a heavy burden. This was not just about the success of the project. This was about the fundamental lesson he had just learned: respect for all people, regardless of their station in life. He had spent years building a powerful empire, but in one instant, that empire had been humbled by a woman he had once dismissed as nothing more than a servant. The air in the room seemed to grow heavier as the silence stretched on. Finally, Harrison spoke, his voice now softer, more reflective than before. "I was wrong," he said quietly. His words, though simple, carried the weight of a man who had come to terms with his own arrogance. "I never should have doubted you, Amelia. You've shown me what true brilliance looks like." Amelia nodded, but didn't respond immediately. She knew better than to gloat. Instead, she turned her attention back to the machine, ensuring that everything was running smoothly. She wasn't in this for the praise or the accolades. She was here to do what was right. But Harrison was not done yet. He stepped closer to her, his demeanor now one of humility. "I owe you more than just an apology," he said. "You've saved more than just my project today. You've saved my perspective." The words hung in the air for a moment before he added, "How can I repay you?" Amelia paused, then looked up at him, her eyes steady. "You've already done more than enough," she said quietly. "I don't need anything from you. Just remember this moment, and remember that intelligence and talent don't come with a title." The sincerity in her voice struck Harrison deeply. He realized that, in his pursuit of success, he had failed to see the true value of those around him. It wasn't about the wealth or the power. It was about respect, humility, and recognizing the worth of every individual, no matter their position in society. As the engineers gathered around, starting to inspect the machine, Harrison stepped back, his mind whirling with new thoughts. He had built his empire on the belief that only the strongest, the smartest, and the wealthiest could succeed. But now, in the quiet aftermath of this moment, he understood that true strength lay in the ability to recognize and appreciate the brilliance in others, regardless of their circumstances. And as the Prometheus engine continued to hum steadily, Harrison silently made a promise to himself. He would never again overlook someone because of their title, their job, or their social status. He would always look for the potential in others, no matter where it came from. This moment, this incredible turn of events, had taught him more than any board meeting or business deal ever could. As the days passed, the office at Thorn Industries began to buzz with a new energy, one that had not been seen before. Harrison had made a public acknowledgement of Amelia's brilliance, but that was only the beginning. What happened next was nothing short of a transformation. The once impersonal, cold corridors of Thorn Industries began to feel warmer. Amelia, once just a cleaner in the background, was now being treated with the respect she deserved. Her expertise was recognized, and her insights were sought after. The engineers, who had once brushed her off, now approached her with questions, eager to learn from her. She had not just fixed the Prometheus engine. She had changed the way people at Thorn Industries saw talent and potential. Harrison, now fully aware of his past mistakes, went out of his way to make things right. He started by giving Amelia a position on the team, a real role that recognized her skill and intellect. The board was initially skeptical, but Harrison was insistent. He knew that true innovation came from diverse ideas and perspectives, and Amelia had proven that beyond a doubt. As weeks turned into months, Amelia proved herself time and time again. Her unique perspective, the one that had been dismissed by so many, was exactly what the company needed to solve problems they had been stuck on for years. Her hands, which had once scrubbed floors, now worked on cutting-edge technology, bringing a fresh approach that no one had thought of. The Prometheus engine was now running better than ever, and Thorn Industries had begun to lead the way in sustainable energy. But beyond that, Harrison had learned the most important lesson of all. Leadership was not about holding on to power, but about empowering others. The shift in the company's culture was evident. Employees who once felt overlooked now had a voice. They were encouraged to speak up, to bring new ideas to the table. The old walls of hierarchy had started to crumble, replaced by a new foundation of collaboration and mutual respect. The success of the Prometheus engine was no longer just a technical achievement. It was a symbol of the change that was happening at Thorn Industries. And Amelia, standing at the center of it all, was no longer invisible. She had become a symbol of what was possible when potential was recognized, no matter where it came from. Harrison, who had spent years building an empire, now found himself building something far more meaningful, a culture where every voice mattered, where brilliance was celebrated regardless of the source. He had found humility in the most unexpected way, and that humility had led to the greatest success of all, not just the success of a project, but the success of the people within the company. As the company continued to innovate, Harrison often thought back to that day when he had underestimated Amelia. He remembered the way she had stood her ground, calm and confident, when no one else believed in her. It had been that quiet confidence, that belief in herself, that had saved his company. And as he looked around at the thriving team, he knew that their future was brighter than ever. Thorn Industries was no longer just about profits and products. It was about people, and it was about giving them the chance to prove their worth, no matter who they were. The success of the Prometheus engine was just the beginning. Harrison now understood that true leadership wasn't about controlling everything. It was about empowering the people around you to shine. And Amelia Hayes had proven that, without a doubt. Months passed, and Thorn Industries was unrecognizable. The changes that had begun with the fixing of the Prometheus engine had rippled through every department, reshaping the company's culture and its leadership. Harrison had transformed from a driven billionaire obsessed with control into a visionary who understood that success wasn't solely about power or profit. It was about people. And Amelia Hayes, the woman he had once dismissed, had become the driving force behind that change. She was no longer just the quiet maid's daughter. She was now a valued member of the team, a leader in her own right. But it wasn't just her technical expertise that set her apart. It was the way she saw the world, the way she understood people, and the way she never gave up, no matter how impossible the odds seemed. The company's new direction, built on the principles of respect, collaboration, and humility, was beginning to pay off. The engineers who had once belittled Amelia now sought her counsel on major projects. Her opinion was no longer just welcome, it was sought after. The executives who had doubted her at the beginning now admired her. And more importantly, the employees who had once felt invisible now had a voice, a chance to contribute, and a sense of pride in their work. One of the most visible changes came during a crucial product launch. Thorn Industries was unveiling a new sustainable energy solution that could revolutionize the way the world used power. The stakes were high, and the pressure was on. But instead of retreating into old habits, Harrison and the team leaned into their new culture. They relied on each other, communicated openly, and encouraged new ideas, no matter where they came from. Amelia's role had expanded beyond the engineering department. She was now involved in every stage of the company's innovation process, helping to bridge the gap between the technical and the human side of business. She reminded everyone that technology was about more than just machines. It was about improving lives. As the launch day approached, Harrison found himself standing in front of a packed auditorium, filled with investors, employees, and journalists. He had never been one for public speeches, but today felt different. The company he had built, the empire that had once been all about numbers and power, was now something more. It was a reflection of the people who made it possible. He took a deep breath and addressed the crowd. Today, he said, is not just about technology. It's about the people who created it. It's about the innovation that comes when we listen to everyone, no matter their background, their job, or their title. Today is about change. It's about breaking the barriers that have held us back and opening the doors for every person to contribute to something greater than themselves. The crowd erupted in applause, but it wasn't just the product that they were applauding. It was the new culture, the new approach to business. Harrison glanced over at Amelia, who was standing in the front row. Her quiet smile said it all. She had shown him the way, not through words, but through actions. And now, Thorn Industries was reaping the benefits. The launch was a success, but the real victory was the transformation that had taken place within the company. The Prometheus engine, once a symbol of failure, was now a symbol of what could be accomplished when everyone's voice was heard and valued. Harrison knew that this was only the beginning. The road ahead would be challenging, but he also knew that with Amelia's leadership, and with the strength of a company that had learned the power of collaboration, there was no obstacle they couldn't overcome. Thorn Industries had truly changed, and so had he. As the months continued to pass, the transformation at Thorn Industries became more apparent with each passing day. Amelia had proven herself not just as a technical genius, but as a leader in her own right. The company, once a place where hierarchy and status ruled, had become a thriving environment of collaboration and respect. Employees, regardless of their position, were now encouraged to speak up, share their ideas, and contribute to the company's growth. Amelia's influence was felt across every department. She had not only saved the Prometheus engine, but had also set a new standard for how innovation should be approached. Harrison, who had once been blinded by his own power and wealth, now found himself continually learning from the people around him. He had come to realize that the best leaders were those who listened, who empowered others, and who knew when to step aside and let the true talent shine. But as the company's success grew, so did the challenges. The energy market was more competitive than ever, with new players emerging every day, each with their own technological breakthroughs and strategies. Thorne Industries had to stay ahead of the curve or risk falling behind. With new advancements in renewable energy and artificial intelligence, the pressure was mounting. Amelia knew that if the company was to remain at the forefront, they needed to think even bigger, even bolder. And so, she began working on a project that would challenge everything they thought they knew about energy production. It was a new concept, one that combined renewable energy with cutting-edge artificial intelligence to create a self-sustaining energy system. The project was ambitious, and some of the executives were skeptical. They had been burned before by failed ideas, and this one seemed like a long shot. But Amelia, with her quiet determination, believed it was the future. She spent countless hours in the lab, working alongside her team, testing theories, and refining the technology. Harrison, now fully committed to supporting her vision, stood by her side, offering guidance and resources. Slowly but surely, the pieces began to fall into place. The system they were developing was unlike anything the world had ever seen. It had the potential to change the way energy was produced and consumed forever. But as with all great ideas, there were obstacles. The project faced intense scrutiny from both investors and industry experts. Some questioned its feasibility, others worried about the cost. The pressure to deliver results was enormous, but Amelia remained focused. She knew that failure was not an option, not when so many people had placed their trust in her and Thorne Industries. As the deadline for the prototype's unveiling approached, tensions ran high. The team worked around the clock, pushing themselves to the limit, driven by the belief that they were on the brink of something groundbreaking. Finally, the day arrived. The prototype was ready, and it was time to show the world what they had accomplished. The investors, the media, and the industry experts were all in attendance, waiting to see if the promises made would come to fruition. Amelia stood at the front of the room, her heart racing as she prepared to present the project that had consumed so much of her time and energy. She knew that this moment would define not just her career, but the future of Thorne Industries. With a deep breath, she began her presentation, her voice steady and confident. She outlined the features of the new system, explaining how it would revolutionize energy production and consumption. As she spoke, she could see the looks of skepticism turning into expressions of awe. The project was a success. It worked, and as the presentation concluded, the room erupted into applause. Thorne Industries had once again proven that it was a leader in innovation. Harrison, who had watched the entire presentation, felt a deep sense of pride, not just in the project, but in Amelia. She had taken the company to new heights, proving that when you give people the freedom to lead, to innovate, and to push boundaries, they can accomplish the impossible. Thorne Industries had found its future, and that future was brighter than ever. The success of the new energy system prototype was just the beginning. Thorne Industries had made a name for itself as a leader in innovation, but with success came new challenges. The pressure to maintain this level of excellence, to stay ahead of the competition, was mounting. Amelia knew that the next step was crucial. It wasn't enough to simply lead in technology. They needed to ensure that the world understood the value of their breakthrough. It was time to take their work beyond the lab and into the real world. But even as the company prepared to scale the technology, the road ahead was not without obstacles. The energy market was notoriously conservative, slow to adopt new technologies, and many of their competitors had deep pockets and decades of influence. Some investors were still skeptical, unsure if the new system was truly sustainable. There was also the challenge of convincing governments and regulatory bodies to back the technology, which could revolutionize energy production. The political landscape was as complicated as ever, and getting the necessary approvals would take more than just a great product. It would take persistence, strategy, and a lot of negotiation. But Amelia was undeterred. She had learned that success was not about avoiding failure. It was about finding new ways to overcome it. Harrison, who had once doubted her, now stood beside her, fully supportive of the direction she was taking. He had come to realize that true leadership meant supporting the team, not just pushing for profit. Amelia had already demonstrated that she could change the game, and now it was time to play it on a global scale. The first step was a meeting with the United States Department of Energy. The stakes were high. If they could secure government support, the potential for growth was enormous. The meeting was scheduled in Washington, D.C., and Amelia, along with Harrison, flew out to present their case. The room was filled with experts, policymakers, and potential investors. The weight of the moment wasn't lost on Amelia. She had spent her entire career being overlooked, underestimated. But now, she stood before some of the most powerful people in the country, not as a cleaner, but as a leader ready to change the future. As she began her presentation, her voice steady and confident, she felt a sense of pride in how far she had come. She spoke of the system's potential, the environmental impact, and the economic benefits. She knew this was more than just a sales pitch. It was a chance to prove that innovation could reshape the world. The room was silent as Amelia wrapped up her presentation, a quiet tension hanging in the air. It was clear that everyone was weighing the possibilities. Finally, a senior advisor from the Department of Energy spoke. "This is impressive," he said, his tone thoughtful. "We've seen a lot of proposals, but this has the potential to change everything." The room exhaled collectively, and for the first time, Amelia felt the weight of the moment lift. The Department of Energy would be backing their project. The road ahead was still uncertain, but this was a breakthrough, one that would take Thorne Industries from a leader in innovation to a global pioneer in energy. As the meeting ended and the team walked out of the building, Harrison turned to Amelia, a look of genuine respect on his face. "You did it," he said. "You've taken us to the next level." Amelia smiled, but her mind was already racing ahead to the next challenge. She knew that this success was only the beginning. The world was about to change, and Thorne Industries was going to lead the way. She had always believed that innovation wasn't just about creating something new. It was about creating something that could make the world better. And now, with the support of the Department of Energy and a company that had learned to believe in her, Amelia knew they could make that vision a reality. With the backing of the Department of Energy secured, Thorne Industries was poised to make its mark on the global stage. The pressure to succeed had never been greater, but neither Amelia nor Harrison were the type to back down from a challenge. They knew that this was the moment that would define their legacy. As they returned to the office, the energy was palpable. The entire company had been holding its breath, waiting for confirmation that their work would not just stay within the confines of their labs, but would have the impact they had always dreamed of. The next phase of the project was now in full swing. The team worked tirelessly, refining the technology, adjusting it for mass production, and preparing for its first large-scale implementation. It was a race against time, but Amelia was used to that. She had spent her life working against the odds, and now she was leading the charge for something that could change the world. Meanwhile, Harrison, who had once been focused solely on profits, found himself more and more drawn to the human side of the work. He visited the engineering departments, spoke with employees on the floor, and began to see his company in a new light. It wasn't just about the bottom line anymore. It was about the people, the ones who had made this possible, and the impact they could have on the world. As the project neared completion, they faced a new set of obstacles. The media was buzzing, and the world was watching. Some critics raised concerns about the long-term sustainability of the technology, while others questioned whether it could truly deliver on its promises. The spotlight was on Thorne Industries, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. But Amelia wasn't afraid. She had faced out before and had always come out on top. She knew that this technology would work, and the world would see it soon enough. The day of the official launch arrived, and with it came an unexpected wave of emotions. The team gathered in the company's headquarters, nervous but excited. The pressure to succeed had never felt heavier, but Amelia stood tall, her confidence unwavering. Harrison, who had once doubted her, now stood beside her as her biggest supporter. The press conference was packed with reporters, all eager to hear about the breakthrough that could change the future of energy. Amelia took the stage, the weight of the moment hanging over her like a storm cloud. But as she spoke, she felt the weight lift. This was her moment, not just for Thorne Industries, but for everyone who had ever been overlooked or underestimated. As she explained the technology, its benefits, and its potential, she saw the faces in the crowd shift. The skepticism that had filled the air at the beginning of the press conference slowly turned into admiration. People were starting to believe. The final test came when the technology was activated for the first time in front of the audience. The room fell silent as the system powered up, its hum filling the air. For a moment, it seemed like time stood still. And then, to the delight of the entire team, the system worked flawlessly. The energy they had promised was now a reality. The crowd erupted into applause, and Harrison, who had once been only concerned with numbers, now found himself standing in awe of what they had accomplished. He turned to Amelia, a smile spreading across his face. "We did it," he said simply. Amelia smiled back, her eyes shining with the same quiet confidence that had brought her here. The world had just changed, and she had been the one to lead the charge. As Thorn Industries looked ahead, there was no doubt in anyone's mind that they were on the brink of something monumental. But more than that, the company had been transformed. It was no longer just a place of business. It was a place where dreams were realized, where people were given the chance to rise, no matter their background. And for the first time in his life, Harrison understood what true success meant. It wasn't about the profits. It was about the people and the legacy they created together. As Thorn Industries moved forward, the impact of their success rippled throughout the energy sector and beyond. Amelia, now recognized as one of the brightest minds in the industry, had not only proven herself but had become the face of a new era for the company. Her journey from an invisible maid's daughter to the driving force behind a global technological breakthrough had become a symbol of how far perseverance, intelligence, and the right opportunities could take a person. The world was watching, and Thorn Industries was no longer just a player in the energy market. It was a trailblazer. Harrison, who had once viewed the company through the lens of power and profits, now understood the true meaning of leadership. He had learned that success wasn't just about being at the top. It was about elevating others, recognizing the potential in every individual, and creating an environment where everyone had the opportunity to contribute. This shift in perspective had not only made the company stronger, but had also fostered a culture of innovation and respect that permeated every level of Thorn Industries. As the company continued to grow, so did its impact. The self-sustaining energy system they had developed was being implemented worldwide, changing the way countries thought about energy production and consumption. In areas once reliant on traditional, polluting energy sources, Thorn Industries' technology offered a cleaner, more efficient alternative. Governments and corporations were eager to partner with the company, eager to be part of the future. The energy crisis that had loomed over the world for decades was now being addressed in a way no one had imagined. For Amelia, the work was far from over. There were still challenges to overcome, still hurdles to clear, and still countless lives to change. But she had learned that true progress came from embracing the journey, not just focusing on the destination. Every step forward, every setback, and every victory was part of the bigger picture. As she stood at the helm of a company that had transformed the world, Amelia knew that her work was more than just about technology. It was about making a difference, about using innovation to create a better future for everyone. And as she looked around at the thriving team that had built Thorn Industries into what it was today, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. They had all been a part of something incredible. They had all changed the world together. Harrison, standing beside her, now fully understood what leadership meant. It wasn't about taking credit. It was about empowering others to succeed, to take the company to places they had never dreamed possible. As he reflected on the journey that had brought them here, from the moment he had mocked Amelia to the day they unveiled their groundbreaking technology, he felt an overwhelming sense of pride. It wasn't just about the product they had created, it was about the people they had become. Together, they had redefined what success meant. It was no longer about the money or the fame. It was about the legacy they would leave behind, the change they had made in the world. Thorn Industries was not just a company. It was a beacon of hope, a testament to the power of collaboration, innovation, and, above all, the belief that anyone, no matter their background, could make a difference. And for Harrison, for Amelia, and for everyone at Thorn Industries, the journey was just beginning. In this inspiring tale, we delve into a true rags-to-riches story that showcases the incredible journey of a humble individual who rises against all odds. This millionaire story is filled with twists and turns as a cleaner's daughter, underestimated by everyone, becomes the key figure in saving a global energy company. As the company faces its biggest challenges, the protagonist, once dismissed as invisible, proves herself to be the person who will change the future of the energy industry. Through determination, intellect, and a deep understanding of the world, she helps revolutionize a failing company, turning it into one of the most powerful forces in sustainable energy. This is one of those millionaire stories that will leave you questioning everything about what success truly means. From being mocked and overlooked to becoming a leader in a field that could change the planet's future, this narrative is an unforgettable lesson in persistence and the importance of believing in yourself. This is not just another success story. It's a tale of transformation and hope, showing that the most incredible millionaire stories often come from the most unlikely people. If you are looking for inspiration and a reminder of the power of resilience, this millionaire story will surely leave you motivated and ready to take on your own challenges.